I think Theresa has just very eloquently set out some of the challenges that women are currently facing in this country. And I just wanted to drill down a little bit more into that and specifically talk about women in local politics, because it's something that, as someone who was a councillor for the first time in 2015, I know quite well. And it was quite interesting, Theresa, what you were saying, because yesterday there was a lot of debate going on in International Women's Day where people were saying, well, why do we need it anymore? Actually, why should women have this special day? We've met equality, we've reached equality. And there were lots of men ringing in and making this comment, but also some women as well. And I think we have a real challenge here, because I don't feel equal. I think there are still vast challenges that exist in our communities. Theresa's just highlighted some of them, and some of them go even deeper than that. And I do think that having International Women's Day, yes, it's one day in a year, and actually every day should be a day for women, but being able to have that debate and raise some of those challenges and saying that it's not just in this country, but in countries across the world, there are still huge, huge challenges when it comes to equality, I think is so, so important. And one of those places those challenges still exist is within politics. So for all my sins, I'm the chair of the local campaign forum here in Medway, as well as being a councillor. And one of my jobs was to try and get, working with some of the other brilliant women that we've already got involved, more and more women involved in our local campaign and standing to be candidates and standing to be councillors. And I'm going to say to you, it has been a bit of a challenge. It has been a bit of a challenge. There tends to be a bit of a reluctance from a lot of people to want to come forward. Not like the men, they're like, I'm here, come and grab me. But definitely from the women, it was a bit of a challenge. And it made me think a bit about how I first got involved in politics and what motivated me. And really, growing up, it was having a dad who spoke to me a lot about politics and told me a lot about what was happening in the world, but also seeing the difference that politics made to our life as a family. I come from a poor family living in Medway who, had a very lovely childhood, but it wasn't always, I wouldn't say we were the most affluent of families. And I saw how government and local politics really changed my family's life. And that motivated me and made me think, actually, politics is a good way to make change. And so I got involved with the only party that I felt was able to do that would stand up for me, but would also stand up for equality, and that was the Labour Party. Other parties are available. I've stolen that from Vince, but I wouldn't recommend any of the others. That's what got me involved. But it took me a while to want to come forward and say, actually, I want to stand for elected office. Actually, I was speaking to a friend of mine who is a man, and he said, you should do this. And I said to him, well, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I've got the skills to be a local councillor. And he said, well, why do you think that? And I said, well, it looks really scary. It looks really hard. It looks like you've got to get up and speak in front of a lot of people, which, funnily, I used to really hate doing. And you've got to be able to go out there and, campaign. And I just don't think that I've got the skill sets that you need. And he said, don't be silly. But I didn't believe it. And it took me, I didn't believe in myself that I could do this job. So that first time I missed out on standing. And I looked around me and I thought about it for a long time, that interaction where he had told me that I should try something and I should go for it. And the fact that I'd said no. And the only person that had missed out was me. I'd missed out on this opportunity to go out and do something about things I cared about and make a difference. And I hadn't taken it because I didn't believe I could. And as I got more and more involved in politics, and as I started to do more and more campaigning, this individual continued to encourage me and said to me, you need to step forward because actually you can do this, and there's lots of things that you care about, that you're passionate about, and politics is still the way to make that change. And that's what I've always believed. And so eventually I put myself forward. The first time I stood, I lost. I've actually lost more elections than I've won, just to say. So it's not a great track record. But I did, and I can truly say it's the best thing that I've ever done. And I absolutely love being a councillor, even though it has challenges. And I will talk a bit about some of those challenges because it's important to be honest with people. But actually, it's one of the best things that I've done. And when I started looking at what our Medway campaign looked like for 2019 and thinking about all the women that came forward, I saw myself and the same hesitations that I had all those years in them. Because it's true that when women put themselves forward for something, they want to tick every box. They want to meet all that criteria. They want to have the confidence that they know what they're doing. And frankly, we teach our men not to worry too much about that, actually. From a very, very young age, they are taught, the world is yours, go and get it. You know, and you can look at, there was a magazine that went out not so long ago, and on the front cover of the boys magazine, it said, what would you like to be in the future? Had a picture of someone with a CEO, a young boy with a suit on, or do you want to be an explorer? All these opportunities that were available to this young boy. The same magazine for women had how do you curl your hair and how to make your lips look shiny. Not that I've got any problems with lips looking shiny, but that shouldn't be the message that we're giving to our young people. And it does start at that age. It's that confidence that we give our boys, but don't always give our girls, that makes the difference. So if there's anything that I think we should be doing, it's that. It's being mentors, it's being a support network for each other, it's encouraging the woman next to you to say, you can do this. Because it was a man that encouraged me, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think there are other things that we can do to make things easier, unpacking the selection process, looking at the structures of the Labour Party, which sometimes can seem a little bit, oh, where do I start, particularly if you're new to it. You know, I think we all fall into the trap of using acronyms all the time, forgetting that some people just don't know what that means, and that can look and seem very, very intimidating. And I think we do need to start looking at what local politics projects generally. So, you know, I know that no party is immune to some of the problems when it comes to men and women's rights. I know a friend of mine who stood to be a parliamentary candidate, actually, in Wales, and she gave this amazing speech, and one of the members came up to her at the end of it and said, that was a brilliant speech. I've not heard a speech like that since Neil Kinnock, but I can't vote for you because you're a woman. And those were the words that were said by a Labour Party member. So there are challenges within our own party, I think, that we should be honest about sometimes, that can put people off. But equally, I think I would much rather be a part of this party that projects that equality than the Tories, who seem to not have a clue about it at all. And I'll give you some examples here in Medway as a councillor that I've experienced, which I don't really know. You know, I think clearly particularly I think if you're new to being a councillor and you're slightly younger, they think that they treat you like a little girl sometimes. I don't know if anyone else has ever had that experience. But I remember going into one of the meetings where I'm the spokesperson, and the chair of that meeting refused to really address me directly and would always address to the men. And then at the end said, gentlemen, we're going to take a vote on this. And I was in the room, and there was another very senior member of the officer team, and both of us looked at each other because this was, you know, 2018, and we'd just been wiped out as if we didn't exist. And so I actually had to say, excuse me, Chair, but I am not a gentleman, and I am sitting here. And he looked very flustered by it, and he did apologise, but the fact is, he just pretended that I didn't exist. I was sitting right in front of him. Equally, the leader of our council, who is an interesting man to say the least, very recently came up to my dad at an event. It was a military event, and he said, your daughter's quite rude to me. And my dad looked at him and said, excuse me? And he said, yeah, she can sometimes be a bit rude. And it was all very jokey. You know, it was like, oh, she's a bit rude. And my dad came over to me, not knowing who he was, and said, oh, what's going on? And I said, that's the leader of the council. I'm not rude to him. I challenge him on his politics, which I disagree with. But the reason why he feels he can come over to you and say that is because he sees me as a little girl who he can go and speak to my father about. And that is the level, you know, I'm a councillor in that room, however, that is how he thought was a good way to go and address and challenge something. And I didn't find it funny. He might have done, but I certainly didn't. So we have this challenge, and it's not about painting a bleak picture. I think it's about saying that we've got to rise against that challenge, because they are some of the attitudes that still exist. They exist in local politics, they exist in Parliament, and the only way we're going to challenge them is if we stand up and say we want to be counted, and we stand up and say, actually, it does seem a bit daunting, it does seem a bit tough, but when we come together, we can break down those barriers and we can work together. And actually, we don't want the future to look like that. We don't want the future in Medway. We only have one woman on the Tory cabinet, and not a single person from a black and ethnic minority background. That's not what Medway looks like, and that's why they can't represent us. That's why they vote down things on period poverty. That's why they don't care that the gender pay gap has gone up in Medway. They don't care because it doesn't affect their lives. And the only way we can get that change is if we are willing to stand up. So I will just end on this note. There is a statue that's come all the way from New York, and it's currently in Paternoster Square in London, and it's Fearless Girl. And there's a really clear message that I think she says it far better than I ever could after rambling on for 10 minutes. But she says no women's power in leadership. And I think that is where I'd like to end this, and I hope you take that message away with you, to know women's power in leadership, to know that together we can make that change, and to want to make that change in the future. Thank you.